Four-cylinder diesel power is back for the new Toyota LandCruiser. I say new, but this is still a very old four-wheel drive in many senses. We've now got a 2.8-litre turbo diesel engine as an option, along with a 6-speed automatic gearbox. There's new technology, there's more stuff going on inside. Obviously, there's a new look as well. So if you're interested in the new Toyota LandCruiser, you're waiting for one, maybe you're considering a four-cylinder instead of the V8, this is the video you're going to want to watch because I'm going to run you through everything you need to know about this new 2024 Toyota LandCruiser. Let's go. The updated 2024 70 Series LandCruiser comes in the same variety of body styles. There's a single cab and double cab 79 Series Ute, a 76 Series wagon and a 78 Series trip carrier. All models come in Workmate and GXL trim levels, while the 79 Series single cab also can be had in a mid-spec GX variant. Prices have gone up by more than $8,000 for V8 models, and four-cylinder variants cost $4,000 more than the V8 used to, so prices have gone up across the board. Now you can spend as much as $87,600 plus on-road costs for a double cab GXL, and that's the 79 Series with a V8. Now don't forget that this is a cab chassis, so you'll need to budget a little bit more for something like a tray or canopy on the back. Upgrades for 2024 include a new 6.7-inch infotainment display with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, automatic LED headlights, some extra safety equipment, more power outlets and an extra cup holder inside for some models. Otherwise, it's business as usual with leaf-sprung rear suspension with that disparate wheel track, coil springs up front with radius arms as well. Workmate variants are still quite basic overall, and it would have to be one of the last examples of a new car in Australia with manual winding windows, and they also miss out on a small digital clock. Regardless of your choice of engine, there is over 1 tonne of payload available across the LandCruiser range, with a 3.5-tonne brake-to-tone capacity and a relatively generous gross combination mass, which really befits the true workhorse status of this vehicle. The 2.8-litre four-cylinder turbo diesel engine makes 150 kilowatts and 500 newton meters, which is the same as the HiLux and LandCruiser Prado, and it runs through a familiar Asian-sourced 6-speed automatic gearbox with a part-time four-wheel drive system. There's also low-range, auto-locking hubs and diff locks available in some models. The 4.5-litre diesel V8 carries on with the same 151 kilowatts and 430 newton meters, so that's 70 less newton meters than the four-cylinder, despite this V8 being 1.7 litres larger in capacity. The V8 also sticks with a 5-speed manual gearbox as the only choice of transmission. Toyota says that this 2.8-litre powertrain is around 60 kilograms lighter than the V8 overall. That gives it a slightly better payload, and it uses around 10% less fuel according to Toyota's claims. Before we drive, I just wanted to have a quick look at this new look for the LandCruiser because it is interesting, and I'm reading a lot of comments from people that like it and a lot of people that don't like it as well. I think this is the kind of car that people really don't like change in any form. So generally speaking, if there is an update for the LandCruiser, people start off on the negative point of view. But let me know in the comments below what you think. I don't mind it actually, after I've spent a bit more time in it and seen it in person. We've got these round headlights here, you've got daytime running lights on the outside. They've got a lot of detail going on actually, not just a straight ring around. And importantly on the inside there, you've actually got projector LED headlights now. They're significantly better than the old candle burners that the regular LandCruiser used to have. We drove this around at night a little bit last night. Definitely an improvement there. This bumper has been updated as well. Big slab of chrome on the front of this one because this is the GXL model, the most expensive in the range. And we've got this heritage style grille. I think I've seen more 70 Series LandCruisers with this kind of grille aftermarket than with the regular one. So Toyota's picked up what everyone's been putting down. They've put this heritage grille on. It looks good. A little bit more venting around the place. This does have a different cooling package. This is a four-cylinder, by the way. And we've got a different bonnet as well, which is nice and high. And the engineers from Toyota told us that they actually wanted to fit a big radiator for this 2.8. They didn't want to drop it down too low, so they raised up this bonnet to raise the cooling to keep it out of the way of sticks and rocks and mud and all of that sort of thing. So that is a nice detail. But once you start moving back, these changes start to disappear very quickly. This is all regular LandCruiser as we've known it for quite a long time here. even to the point where, yes, there's no more V8, but you do still get that issue with the wheel track here. They haven't updated that in this regard, unfortunately, so you do get that big discrepancy from front to rear. Here's the interior of the new LandCruiser. We are in a 2.8 litre with the auto here, as you can see, and this is a GXL dual cab. Still, this is one of the most antiquated vehicles on sale at the moment. It doesn't stop people from loving the car. Personally, I do love this car for what it is, but it is an old experience when you are sitting in it. So some of the updates here to point out, most importantly, this automatic shifter here does come with a different console. So you've got not one, but 2 cup holders now in a LandCruiser 70 series. Quite amazing, actually. Some extra storage here and a center console a little bit further back. That's the same old one that's been there for quite a while. It doesn't feel like the strongest bit of gear getting around, but I guess it does the job. Still got a short lever there for the transfer case, selecting low range. It's still part-time four-wheel drive. It's still, in terms of the engine and gearbox, that has changed, but the four-wheel drive system is the same carry-over setup as before. The infotainment, this is new as well. You've got a small display here that has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It doesn't use an operating system that I've seen in other Toyotas before, so I'm assuming that this is an off-the-shelf unit that they've thrown in from somewhere else. It's not similar to a Corolla, for example, or something like that. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There is Bluetooth and radio, but there is no native navigation. Fairly basic and rudimentary setup there, but it is an improvement as to what was there before. There's one USB power outlet there with this infotainment display, 2 USB-Cs and a 12-volt plug there. Plus, with this auto, you do get the second start button here, a power haul function, and also a hill descent control. So definitely a little bit more going on in this new LandCruiser in comparison to the old ones. But hey, look, still the same seat fabric here, still the same dashboard. Still got this same little clock here, which actually gets deleted in lower spec models. So if you do want to tell the time easily, you have to spend up for the GXL. But otherwise, I guess if it ain't broken, don't fix it for the majority of things. We've got a new steering wheel here with some other buttons, but otherwise, it's same old, same old. So the big question on everyone's lips, of course, is what's this 4-cylinder LandCruiser like to drive? We all know about the V8. It's been around since the mid-2000s. It's been really well loved by a lot of people. More because I think of what it feels like and what it stands for. In its standard form, it can feel a bit breathless. It can feel a bit low on power in the top end. Fantastic torque off idle and that sort of thing. A really great engine for driving off-road. It feels like it's impossible to stall. But on-road performance, especially when loaded up, is left a little bit wanting, especially because this car is such a big thing trying to punch through the air. That V8 does have to work hard. What is this 4-cylinder like in comparison? Well, it's got 1 less kilowatt, which, you can take that or leave that, but it's got 70 extra Newton meters of torque from 2.8 litres. But I think the most important thing here is the 6-speed automatic gearbox. I'm currently cruising along in low range at the moment on a bush track outside the back of Broken Hill. But I just want to sort of highlight the fact that this thing is faster than a V8, mostly because there is a bit of extra torque there. There isn't the same width of peak torque as you get in that V8, which is effectively from idle all the way to redline. This does have a narrower band, but it doesn't really matter because the 6-speed auto just allows you to access the torque much, much easier and faster. So you punch it and it goes and it takes off, and it's definitely more responsive. It gets moving in a smarter fashion than the V8. I've got no doubt that this, if you had to drag race them, I don't know why you'd be drag racing 70 series LandCruisers, but the 4-cylinder would win hands down. Some other things to note about the driving experience here. The 4-cylinder is definitely quieter. It's definitely smoother. It doesn't have that gruff nature, so it doesn't rumble on startup. It definitely doesn't have the same noise. So if you love the V8 for being a V8, of course, this 4-cylinder is going to feel like you've kind of shortchanged yourself a little bit, but it's not from the driving experience. Otherwise, it's all usual stuff for 70 series LandCruiser here. We've still got live axles front and rear. We've still got good old-fashioned recirculating ball steering that feels particularly old-fashioned on the road. If you drive four-wheel drives like this all the time, you've come from the world of old Defenders and GQ Patrols, you'll feel perfectly at home in this car and it's fine, no issues at all. But if you're coming out of a nice, sharply designed BMW or something like that, you're going to get into this and be like, whoa, this steering is super vague and nothing happens until you turn it halfway. It's just the nature of the beast, and by the time you get used to it, it's not too bad. Suspension on-road and off-road is fairly rough as well. It's definitely heavy duty, it's durable. This is one of the last few live axled four-wheel drives left on the market, especially when you consider the live front end on this car, and it's got a reputation for longevity, durability that other car makers frankly could kill for. But that means the ride quality isn't as big a priority with this car, and you can certainly feel it. Driving along this track at the moment, it's not too bad. I'm getting jostled around a little bit. It's one of those things you kind of get used to, but I had a quick period of time there riding along in a HiLux as I was being ferried to and from a tow position. I'll get to towing in a second, but man, I've got to say the HiLux isn't the best riding car in the world, but it felt like a Rolls Royce in comparison to this 70 series. It's certainly not a strength of this car, but at lower speed situations, bush tracks and that sort of thing, it does start to feel a little bit more at home, this LandCruiser, because it's geared so low, because it's got nice amounts of torque, and because frankly off-road it is very good. There are issues with ground clearance if you're doing things like rock crawling around the back of this vehicle, especially the single cab and double cab utes where that number plate is positioned. It is a bit vulnerable there, and the leaf sprung suspension does sit low relative to the differential and the undercarriage of the car, so you might get hung up there in some situations. It's definitely not the most capable off-roader out of the box, but it is very good. GX and GXL specifications get locking diffs front and rear, something that the car does really need, I think, because there's not a whole lot of articulation going on. Obviously this car is built for load carrying, not flexing up for Instagram photos and that sort of thing. This is a working vehicle at the end of the day, but diff locks fix the wheels coming off the ground, but it's also got a very good traction control system as well. That is pretty good at reining in wheel spin and getting torque to where it needs to go. So you can cruise at a nice low speed with a proper low range transfer case that offers pretty good reduction, and you can cruise through nice and slowly, pick your line and do what you need to do. It feels more at home off-road in low speed technical situations, I think, than most other dual cab utes. I would say regular dual cab utes. This is a really capable vehicle, and obviously the whole payload situation, this is a step above most others as well. It's got 3.5 ton towing, but it's also got a big gross combination mass, which means you can use all of your payload and a lot of your towing capacity at the same time. Try doing that in a more regular dual cab ute, and I would hazard a guess that you'd be overloaded. So which is the better choice, 4-cylinder or V8? It comes down to a head or heart decision, I think, and looking at it in the most rational way possible, this 4-cylinder is the better choice. It's got a better transmission, it's more easily accessible, it offers better performance, better efficiency, better payloads as well, slightly better refinement. So that is a no-brainer, but the V8 is still there, and the heart says that that is the engine to choose because, one, it is a fantastic engine to drive off-road, even as a manual. It feels like it's impossible to stall, and it's got a nature and a character that is rapidly disappearing in today's automotive scene. So if you choose the V8, I totally get it. I probably would go that way myself as well. But if you opt for the 4-cylinder, well, you're going to be in a LandCruiser much sooner. That's one thing. And you're going to have a car that still does all of the right things. It's still durable, still does all those LandCruiser things in terms of the powertrain, the live axles, all of that sort of thing, the payload capacities. And you're not going to really notice any loss or diminishing of performance off the bat. Now there's a whole question mark about what a 4-cylinder will be like in 10 years in comparison to the V8. I know that LandCruisers have a really great reputation for durability, but also longevity. Now that's another thing that I can't answer right now. Obviously that will be answered in the fullness of time. But as much as you might want to not like this 4-cylinder, let's face the facts, it is pretty good. And it leaves a 4-wheel drive LandCruiser as being the same old, flawed, but lovable vehicle that I'm glad still exists, and many people do. It's not just people who live in the affluent suburbs who want a boxy 4-wheel drive that looks tough. There's a lot of those getting around, but it's also farmers, it's miners, it's people that genuinely use this thing and put it to hard work in terms of payloads and rough country driving. This does it better than anything else at the moment. And yes, it's expensive, but what are your other options? The old Land Rover Defender's gone, the old Nissan Patrol, that's long gone as well. It's only really the Ineos Grenadier that's coming soon as a ute and now out as a wagon that competes with this LandCruiser in terms of that offering. But its payload is not as good and it's much more expensive as well. So as much as I hate to say it, this LandCruiser kind of looks like a value proposition in that company. It's crazy to say because this is still old and antiquated and frankly quite expensive for what you get, but that is the truth of the matter. But otherwise, it's still the same old LandCruiser we all know and love and hate in equal measure. If you love it, you totally get it and you understand why people love it so much, and you're happy to put up with all of these shortcomings of cup holders, ride quality, ride comfort, ergonomics, all of these things that frankly just don't cut the mustard in today's day and age. And if you don't like it, well, you just don't get it, right? It's expensive and old and rubbish, right? You're not going to be buying this thing, but Toyota doesn't really mind because there's so many people who do want this thing for professional but also recreational usage. Now, we also had the opportunity to do some towing with this 2.8 litre 4-cylinder LandCruiser. We had a 3.1 tonne Kedron Caravan hooked onto the back, about 300 kilos of ball weight, something around that area anyway. And we drove it on a bit of bitumen and a bit of dirt and through some wallows and that sort of thing. And pulling 3 tons is no mean feat, especially when you've got such a large vehicle for that engine already. But I've got to say, the LandCruiser did okay. That torque is easily accessible. It's available in a narrower band, yes, but there's more of it. And the 6-speed is able to get the engine where it needs to be to pull pretty strongly. It's definitely not a rocket ship when it's towing, but I've got to say, it's impressive. It's not too bad at all. It's likely going to be a much better tow vehicle than the V8 in its standard form, especially with an extra ratio there, the ability for easier kickdowns and a more rev-happy nature. You've got a bit more power that you can explore in the top end of the rev range there, in comparison to the V8 that just starts to feel like it's running out of puff. So haters are gonna hate, right? What can you do about that? And people are still gonna want the V8, no worries, and I fully get it. But credit where credit's due. This 4-cylinder LandCruiser feels good. This 4-cylinder engine is no doubt highly controversial for people who love the LandCruiser. They love the LandCruiser because it's got a V8. They love the 6-cylinder that came out before as well, but the powertrain is such an important part of why this car is so loved in Australia. But you do need to approach it with an open mind, because look at it on paper and it's got less weight, it's got better payload, it's got an auto, so it's going to be faster, it's got more torque. There are things to appreciate with this car that you just can't get around in comparison to that V8, because yes, it's a V8, it rumbles, it makes great noises, but it does feel a bit breathless sometimes when you are actually working it hard. So you need to consider whether this is the better vehicle for you. It just might be. But hey, you might buy this car. I don't think you buy it for rational reasons, do you? You buy it because you love it and you buy it because you want it. And I understand the allure of the V8. Thankfully, it is still there. And if it was me, I would maybe be waiting a little bit longer for that V8 and saving up my pennies for some modifications as well. But the 4-cylinder is definitely very good. Now let me know in the comments below before you leave this video, would you prefer the 4-cylinder? Would you prefer to wait for a V8? Or would you prefer just to get into the 4-cylinder because you can get it faster and hit the road? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more LandCruiser content, check out this video here. That's a 70 series V8 LandCruiser along with a 300 series, the brand new V6 across the Simpson Desert. It was an amazing adventure and it's well worth a watch.